Hello, everybody. My name is Marco Hauen. I'm the co-founder of How Coaching, and today I have the incredible pleasure to have a discussion with Olga K. I love it. And this came up because actually together with Olga we were talking about doing interviews and so on, and then we said, why should we do interviews? It's so boring. Like somebody asks a question and then the other one asks. It just doesn't really give value. And we have always both different angles to the same question. So we thought, okay, let us just do a conversation and do a free flow for the next 30-45 minutes. We'll see. And when it is boring for you, you just go away. If you like it, just watch it again. And so we really wanted to talk about what, and it's a very broad topic, so we'll see where it will drive us. But the idea was to talk about fear and how to use fear, how to be with fear, and to become successful or achieving goals, or whatever you want to call it. So enough about me. Olga, present yourself.
Hey. Well, Marco, you pretty much said it all, so I have nothing to add.
Already.
We can just jump into the cold water and start our free flow.
Well, then let me. So you always have to ask one question at least before you start this kind of talk. So let me ask you a question which is maybe sounds not related to the topic, but I think you will get the idea during our conversation. So, what is wrong with people who are pleasing, who are pleasers?
Well, nothing is wrong with people who are people pleasers. Like we all have it, no? I'm quite sure that you would have this part in you as well, and I do too. So even though like I always prided myself for like being like, oh, like I'm the rebel, I'm not like everybody, and like I'm against the stream. Really. Mm-hmm. But it's so for me, how I see it, it's our basic instinct, if you wish, like we can call it like this, because from birth, as like human babies, we're basically useless. Like we can't do anything by ourselves. So unlike animals, right, who can like stand up and walk already like in the first hours of their life. So human babies, the only way for them to survive is to be connected to mother or any other caregiver. So this desire for connection with others, it's almost like our basic instinct. So like we have it from birth. So in order to survive, we need to connect. And somehow it's so deeply embedded in us that even when we grow up and we don't need others, like per se, to support us in our living function, like the fear of being disconnected, of staying alone, is very strong in us. Because basically, like somewhere very deep in our subconscious, being disconnected means death. So if I'm not connected, I die. What's your take on it?
Actually, what comes up for me, and it's really interesting, is that is, as so many of these reflexes or instincts we are having, they have their absolute right of being. They are necessary, as you say, to survive. They're necessary to connect. They're just necessary as a being, well, to grow and to grow out of it. But as so many of these, and that comes back to our fears, it's because fear of being alone, fear of not being loved, is one of the most important fears of humankind. Is that even so, it is something which we always want. We think we are handling. We are not. It's our mind who is handling it. It's our prefrontal cortex who takes on that and makes out of that a discipline, makes out of that a work, makes out of that something you try to always be to be pleaser, to please people. And even if you are the opposite of a pleaser, it's still pleasing. Even if you are the most odd person, the most negative person, it's always about your ego. It's always about you being recognized. when I was when I was working a lot with Anthony Robbins a few years ago, he always said one of the 6 human needs is connection. Now, connection can be hugging somebody, but connection can also taking out a gun, putting it at the head of somebody and say, hey, look how important I am, because I am the most important person in that moment in your life now, because if I push that button, you're dead. So this connection, this need of connection is always there. Now, I think the big question we should explore is how can we bring that from here to here, so that it becomes, so that it gets its right place in our lives. What's your take?
So what is interesting for me in a way is that fear per se is actually like is not bad, because sometimes we label it as like, oh, it's something bad, it's something to overcome, which in essence is true, because like if we don't overcome our fears, we don't move anywhere, so basically we stand still. However, for me, fears are extremely important as signals. So the fear in our body is a signal for us to understand what is dear to us, because fear is always like being scared of losing something. So when we feel that we're scared to go for something, to get something, to achieve something, it usually means that we're scared to lose something. So what is it? It's our signal to understand ourselves better. So in this sense, fear for me is extremely important.
I can absolutely relate to that. And even so, for the longest time of my life, I tried to avoid fear or to overcome fear. I'm happening to slowly move into another direction for myself, which is that fear is, as you say, fear is something which is part of us. And it's not so much to get rid of it, it's so much to see it and not to get emotionally attached to it. And so that's a discipline, that's a journey. You know, like we can give you promises and tell you, well, you can do this and that, and then it works. At the end, it's always something. Every human being have to find his way. I always say what I can do is share my journey, and maybe some of the parts of that journey you can take on, and it will help and support you of creating your own way of handling fear. I think fearless is stupid, because fearless.
Of course, then we die.
Because there is reason for fear. It's the emotional attachment. It's the fact that we create this. For some, when they fear, they're getting extremely aggressive. Other ones are getting extremely tired. Some ones are getting extremely negative or extremely depressive. Whatever. It's the emotional reaction we are having to fear, which creates the challenge. It's not the fear itself. And so, let's be fearful, proud of it, and decide actually when we want to overcome it and when not. So, as said, being detached. I think that's from my perspective what makes it a fun journey.
Well, actually, it's interesting what you're saying about the emotional attachment to it, and that's like in overcoming this emotional attachment actually lies the path to creating some action and getting outside of this fear realm. So actually, something that I noticed as well working with my clients in coaching is that actually fear is the primary, or this emotional attachment to fear is the primary reason that people don't achieve their goals. Like we tell ourselves like all these stories like, oh, I don't have time, or I don't have like, I don't know, resources for this. I don't have money, like something, my family situation. And we tell ourselves all this story, which is kind of like all these things outside of us. But actually what prevents us from going for something that we really want is our fear inside and our emotional attachment to it, as you said. So for me, it was actually really interesting because I always feel like, okay, whenever I work with someone, we always kind of stumble on this fear. And when you start to dig deeper to understand, okay, so what's the fear? What's underneath this fear? What's underneath? So like you dig deeper and deeper, and it always comes to this fear of disconnection, the fear of being alone, the fear of being not loved, which is essentially the fear of death. which we are trying to resist so hard as human beings that this resistance creates a lot of suffering for us.
And what comes up for me, it's really interesting what you say, because what comes up for me is that we're always looking for this connection, for alleviating this fear outside of ourselves. It's like our life is always driven outside ourselves. We were learned as very young ones to always rely on external stimuli. And if we find ourselves, so if we not go outside, but if we go inside, if we find ourselves, where we have the ultimate connection. The challenge we are having is that we didn't learn to look inside. We were learned to not look inside, and most of us Judeo-Christian upbringing, looking at yourself, looking at your own well-being, the real well-being, the deep grounded well-being is not good. You only have to look at other ones. You only have to look at how they are. But you can actually only be really connected with somebody else if you are really connected with yourself. If you find this connection deep in yourself, this self-love, this self-acceptance, and maybe just being with yourself. I admire people who are able just to disconnect, just be with themselves. I am far away from that. It's so fun when you talk to people and they say, "Oh yeah, is there corona out there?" No, I didn't met somebody like that yet. But in essence, that's what it is about. It's like, how important is all the noise around us, and how less we are valuing our own connection. And this connection is the only connection which will never go away. It's the only connection we can always actually. So like there's always this duality between surrendering and being in control. It's like that's the control. Like, how much more can I be in control and just deciding that I want to be connected to myself, truly, and surrender to myself. So yeah, please.
No, this is something just like that comes up for me. Then when you talk about this self-connection and self-love and self-acceptance, and I don't know, from my perspective, I see one of the main obstacles that we have is that from our early childhood, in the frames of society we live in, we're being taught that putting our desires like behind the desires of others, or putting the desires of others in front of ours, is the good thing. That's what nice people do. That's what good people do. So if we don't do this, like, oh, we're bad, we're so bad. And then we're trying to eliminate this badness in ourselves so harsh, and we also like try to kill it like in others when we see this projection of this badness in somebody else, like, and we judge it so hard and we judge ourselves so hard. So of course, it's no wonder that this like self connection is not happening. The self acceptance is the hardest thing to actually go for.
Well, I can do a large course in why that is happening and why our society pushes that. Maybe suffice to say that our society and the way the society is done is a society always, or collective always was trying, a community always was trying to be run was in a way that you streamline people to not fight, to not have war, to not towards a goal, and that's easier when people are streamlined on one objective, and that doesn't so much matter which one, but when it is external, because that's manageable. Nobody can manage my internal journey. And nobody can understand it really. Yours neither. Nobody's in the journey. We as coaches, we know that. We're not there to drive them. We don't know them. We're just there to give our clients the possibility to see things from a different angle. And then seeing that, there's a new world and a new way opening for them, which again changes their whole life. Now, being in the external always brings you to people like, and it's so beautiful. I read a book about the peace movement in the US, or the people, the survivors of the peace movement of the 60s and 70s in the US, and most of them say, well, we had it all wrong. we were fighting war. How can we fight war? We have to find inner peace, and it's only through this inner peace that we can have an impact. Now, that is not tangible. That is not something you can see. That's not something your ego can do on TV. So it's not easy, and it's very difficult to not go down that road. And I think we all have to be very, very take a lot of attention of not take that road. Every day we could take that road. But at the end, the only change you can make is the change in yourself. And that change triggers others' changes. Our discussion our conversation now is an expression of that of that exchange, of that capability of just being having deep thoughts, thinking about life and exchanging it. But it's not about let's this talk will change the world. Oh yeah, actually I didn't tell you, I forgot to say that we will have 500 million people looking at this, and no, it's absolutely not about it's both of us sharing our deepest thoughts and inspiring people, and not through the fact that we want to inspire, but to the fact that we just love the exchange.
Oh, Marco, I want to share then something, because this exploration of fears, like from my clients, brought me to some research, and I was like, okay, so what can I do to actually help my clients to move into action? Like when they feel the fear, and the fear sometimes can be really paralyzing. So like you physically feel like you freeze, like you just can't move forward to whatever action you want to take. So I started reading about it, and I found very interesting guy. So Dr. Morita, Japanese researcher, he was a psychiatrist. And back in the 80s, he came up with this theory that on the other side of every fear is the desire. So it's the same brain circuit on which both are situated. And it's actually very interesting, because if you think about it, on the backside of every fear, there is a desire. Like when there is a fear of failure, there is always a desire for success. When there is a fear of, what should we say? Like even like if you say when there is a fear of death, there is a desire to leave. So for me, it seemed very interesting. I was like, couldn't it be something which can serve as a reframe? So when we focus on our desires, when we find what's on the opposite side of the fear that we're experiencing, and what this desire is, if we focus on it, what can happen? And then it brought me to reading even more about it, and just like searching like, okay, what was the recent research on desires and like what it is. So in essence, desire is a feeling of like longing or wanting something, because in the end of it, there is a reward. So this anticipation of the reward that gets us into motion. So physically and also mentally, right? And then like I started to read about the brain reaction and the physical reaction inside the body. And it's actually, there is one hormone which is called dopamine, which releases in our body when we expect the reward. And it's also really interesting because this hormone was found back in 1957 already, but nobody took interest in it until late 90s. Nobody really did much of research on it. And actually, the majority of the research started to be around like Parkinson's disease, whether this like hormone, because it's kind of releases the physical activity or like pushes the physical activity, whether this hormone can be helpful for people with Parkinson's diseases. But in the process of examining it, what was found that actually this is the one hormone that also helps us learn, that also is responsible for the sensation of joy in us. And that's basically like essentially what desire is, this anticipation, the joy of anticipation of getting this reward. And it's very different because like when we get the reward, there's a different system already and different hormones responsible for it. But this dopamine thing is something that sets us into motion.
And now there's a lot of research done on dopamine because that's exactly how Facebook and all the social media works, is creating the expectation of a reward. And actually that's how we are all dopamine junkies these days, and loving to like whatever we like to like. and we are hijacked, and actually our brain gets hijacked through this kind of systems, like I said, like social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And so it's absolutely fascinating actually, and how at the end we are create, actually everything is handled in our body, in our way we feel, through biochemistry, through some kind of a hormone, some kind of and at the end it becomes a science how to feel well, how to feel successful, how to be successful. Because we could do a whole series of I don't know how many conversations to talk about success and what is success and what is goals, and should we have goals, should we not have goals, where are the goals driving us? Are these our goals? Are these the goals of whatever framework put it onto us? Just taking football player, like people who want to become a big football player, is that because they want to become a great football player or because they love Ronaldo? We are in a logic where we take goals very often as an excuse for not having to face our inner journey. It's like, oh yeah, well, actually, I don't know, let me just take one example for myself in my life. It's like when I was 24 years old, I did my first personal development seminar. And I went in there, I would say, to blame the whole world for whatever happened to me till then. And I came out, let's kick ass. And I became an entrepreneur and everything. And only very much years later, I really got aware of the fact that at the end, yeah, I let go of one of this victimhood mentality to become a successful businessman, whatever success means. So again, we can discuss about that for a long time. And I did that, but not for myself, just to show that at the end, I am worthy to have the love of my father. So I am all in for goals, but I'm all in for goals which are goals for ourselves, what we really want, not what our framework, which is on top of us. And very often we chose to replace it with a framework which hurted us more before. So now the new framework is better because it feels better. It's still not ours. And so that is where goals become extremely powerful. And that's actually where manifesting is happening, because if you really do what you truly are, then everything happens the way it has to happen. There is no doubt. There's no discussion about achieving a goal. A goal is just part of the journey, and it's happening. But as long as we are acting on the projection of somebody else, that's where we are so, where it becomes so tiring, so difficult. So I have to fight for my life. I have to fight for my. That's what people are using as sentences. Goal setting for me it's so hard, and I don't know what I want, and I don't know that is because there is this inner conflict, because we so often don't want to see really what is going on in ourselves. We are afraid of what is going on in ourselves, or what we would see or the power, the might we have. I love this quote of Marianne Williamson's. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And if at least for me, when I let this poem sink in, it becomes so powerful, because that's exactly what it is. It's like, if you really go deep, and we talked about fear, the fear is not that we will fail. The fear is just that we are so mighty, we are so beautiful. And it's like accepting the fact that we are just amazing. And not amazing like, oh yeah, let's buy a boat, let's buy a Porsche, let's buy whatever. It's not about that amazing. That's again a framework which we take on with somebody else created for us. But we really see our own power. That is frightening, at least for me.
But like for me, like I also always think, it might sound like some woo-woo shit to someone, but it's really interesting how we perceive ourselves, like our core is something bad, instead of seeing that we are pure, like by nature, that this like purity of ours is our natural state. And I don't know, maybe I'm saying this because I'm a mom, but like seeing a newborn baby, like it's purity, you know, like how can this like being harm anyone or do like anything that is like considered bad in our society? It's pure, it's pure love. So when we listen to our desires, what we really want, for me it's almost like you know, like something like how to say this, like it's a signal, or it's a reminder of our purpose. So to fulfill our purpose on earth, because like we're always like, oh, what's our purpose, like what should I leave behind, like everybody thinking about it, why I'm here. But if we would listen to our desires and what we really want, that's our direct path to fulfilling the purpose. Because these desires, they're coming out of a pure space, not out of lack, not out of needing something, not out of fear, you know, but out of love.
And how do you see acting or accessing that power of creating this desire? How do you access it?
Switching off the
Okay, how do you switch off the brain?
I think for different people it's different paths, right? It's like yoga. Yoga is like, there are many yogis, many paths like you can take. And I don't know, for different people it's different. I think like one of the most impactful ones is probably meditation, and you know it. This is the one tool where you can quiet your mind and just like listen to whatever is going on inside of you, and to actually like go inside and to connect to your inner feelings without judgment, which is a difficult concept as well. How not to judge what you feel, you know, just like to accept, to let it be, to just notice. And somehow also the concept of the fact that all our emotions are also bodily sensations is something that helps me a lot. You know, noticing where in my body I feel fear, where in my body I feel this like emotional upset when I'm angry about something. Noticing in my body like what is going on with it when I feel like in this joy of being in this joyful state. That everything that helps me to understand like all emotions are just bodily sensations. So if I experience fear, where is it? And usually, like for me, for example, it comes up somewhere in my stomach. You know, like our belly, like the most kind of vulnerable part of. And just by breathing in there, breathing really deep, it already releases this fear a lot.
It's beautiful what you say, and I really can relate to that so hard. And it's also part of the journey is to get aware of its own body sensations, and comes back to dopamine. It's biochemistry, and we are in biochemistry, and as much as we can create a biochemistry which is making us feel good, we can create a biochemistry which is absolutely toxic to our body. And actually, I'm looking a lot right now into somatic coaching, which is very interesting because it's all about release of trauma in your body. Yeah? And if you look at this way of release, it's really about getting aware of that and then letting it go. Now, that takes training. It's not something we could do it right away, but the brain is cutting us off. But when we really start to really let go this kind of traumas, that's how we can feel better. And all that is interconnected because, well, we learned in our coaching school that first is the thought, then it's the emotion, then it's the action, then it's the reaction. So there are a lot of these frameworks, but this is interconnected. It's like if I have only positive thoughts, which is not possible, but mainly positive thoughts, then I am able to create positive chemistry in my body. Now, if I have a lot of negative or this toxic trauma in my body, then my thoughts get better, get worse. So it's like it's all interrelated, and you have to start somewhere. So that's why there is, to your point, there's not one way. There's not. If there would be one way, Olga, let's write a book and become a billionaire. But there isn't. And the one who tells you that his way is the only way, no, it's the only way for him, and that's great. I'm very happy for everybody who finds this way. But it is not. There's not one way. There are so many, and everybody has to pick out something. That's why these kind of conversations are so, from my perspective, so important, because people just should take out of what we here say and say, oh yeah, that makes sense for me. Cool, I will try that. Well, this is really bullshit. Well, Marco talks about his inner journey. What do I have to do about that? And that's fine, because that's my journey, and I only accept that now, that's my journey. I didn't do that before. So it is very important that we take out of anything we hear what sounds good, what feels good in the body, to come back to what you said, what we really feel. So yeah, maybe I think I share that too often, but I didn't share it today. But you talked about purpose, and what resonated for me tremendously when I researched purpose, my own purpose, is what Eckhart Tolle writes in one of his books. Actually, I don't know if it's Power of Now or The New Earth. It's one of the both, and he shares actually, and I paraphrasing it, like making it shorter, but he says we have every human being has two purposes. There's an inner purpose and there's an outer purpose. The inner purpose is the same for every human being: being aware and staying aware, being aware of yourself. And that is not something metaphysical. That's really about, at least as how I interpret it, my interpretation is that it's really about being aware of your body, being aware of your thoughts, as we said before, detaching from fear, being aware that this fear is there. That's being aware. That's the only real purpose we are having. And the outer purpose is anything which serves the inner purpose. So anything which in our framework of living, so we both grew up in a humanitarian framework since 250 years, more or less. So that's how we were framed. So we want to help people because that's part of our humanitarian upbringing, and that's fine. That helps us. That's why we are coaches, because we want to give, we want to support, and that helps our inner purpose. Now, for other societies, that can be totally different, and that's fine. Of other people, that's totally fine. It's just about the awareness we create for ourselves, and for me that sounds so right. Now, I am somebody who really looks into his own personal journey very much, but this being aware of yourself, of your reactions, of your looking at your emotions, looking at fear, looking at your anger, because that's something we don't want to. Looking at our jealousy, something we don't talk about. Don't talk about jealousy. That's a very taboo subject or topic in our society. But looking at it and say, hey, great, you're there. I see. Okay. I understand why you're there. That's great. You helped me a lot, but in this situation, I don't need you. Well, that's a little bit paraphrasing, and that's not the way how that works in the brain, but somehow it works for me. It's like at one moment in time, okay, well, I could freak out now. I really could get angry like crazy, but
you know what comes up for me?
no. Sorry?
You know what comes up for me, like when you talk about it, that actually I love all this like emotions and thoughts which are labeled as negative, you know, like jealousy, anger, fear, because like as I said before, it's just like it's the signal for us to understand ourselves better. Like you said, right? Like if the purpose is to be aware of ourselves, every single emotion like that, like anger or like jealousy, like anger tells us what we're afraid to, like not afraid, like what is the threat, right? Because we perceive something as a threat to something that is dear to us, so we get angry, like we get into this like motion of protection. We protect what is dear to us. So that's the signal to understand what is actually that I care about so deeply that it gets me angry, right? Like what is this value of mine that I want to protect by all means? Or jealousy, what is that that other person has that I also want to have? And why do I want to have it? You know, so what is it in me that sets me like in this mode of jealousy? Like, and it's like, so for me, it's not bad. It's awesome. That's like the way our inner self communicates with us in a way.
Was it always like that?
No, of course not. I mean, like I get to realize it like on my own journey, right? This kind of a never-ending consciousness journey as well, because the more aware we become, the easier it becomes to listen to those signals, right? To understand them, to interpret them in a clearer way, let's say. But of course, like before I started my coaching study, even though I would say that probably I'm much more aware on average than like, or like pay more attention to myself and why, and it's like constantly analyzing with my brain what is going on with my emotions. Still a lot of things like they just they become very clear right now. And you know, like you can read a lot of this like self-help books, and it's like all these concepts are not new by far, and like everybody said all of this already like million times before, but only when you're really able to feel it here, because like one thing is to understand it in your head, the other thing to like truly, like all of a sudden like something clicks, is like, well, now I feel it, now I know it, now I understand it. Like that's when the magic happens.
There is no, from my perspective, there's no end to our own depth. So this infinite. So this journey never stops, and there are all this, like Lao Tzu says, the journey is the goal. Blah blah. All that it makes so much sense, because at the end our own awareness has no end, and that's beautiful, because that's a purpose in itself. And it comes back to Eckhart Tolle. Coming back to Tolle and to what you said, when I read The Power of Now the first time, let me think, it must be 7-8 years ago, even a little bit more. And I said, great book. Put it away and forget all about it. And then 7 years later, I listened to the book, and I literally listened to both of the books for 6 months straight, and stopped listening to it because it was so much talking to me. And every time I heard this very annoying, calm voice of Eckhart, it talked so much to me till a moment I couldn't anymore. And like, don't put me that book on, because like it drives me nuts. But what I want to say by that is that there's one thing to have it understood with your brain, but then there are so many other levels where you can understand. So the second one for me is here, but then when it goes to the gut and when it really goes deeper, then things are becoming a reality for us, for me. So for me, it's so much more important to revisit a message. Like I love to go back to a book and then listen to it 6 months, because I'm a big Audible guy. So I love to listen to a book I listened to six or a month or a year before, because you listen to another book, because we are evolving. It's not because you saw it, you heard it. These are the to-do books. Huh? It's like if you want to have a to-do list, how to become or how to do that and this, fine, read your tools. But if you want to grow as being, and if being becomes more important than doing, then there's always another depth to a message which you adhere to at one moment in time.
Aww.
So how do you perceive goal setting when it comes to coaching?
Well, good question, Marco. Because well, something that we learned, and something that I feel more and more, is that goal setting, like when we set the goal, we're basically discussing the strategy. You know, like we always craving some sort of feeling underneath of it, because we believe that when we achieve some outer goal, then we will feel something, whatever that is, happy, successful, confident, healthy, like whatever that is that we are craving, right? So we're saying like, okay, when I get this my new promotion, then I feel confident, then I feel successful. When I earn more money, then I can, like, you know, then I'm happy, then I can afford. And from this perspective, like focusing on this feeling that we desire, you know, that's something. This is the reward mechanism, right? Like of the release of dopamine hormone in our brain. So focusing on that, this is something that can really move us into motion. You know, when we can feel, when we can understand, like, okay, this reward in terms of this feeling inside of me is coming, that's what sets us into action. But the actual goal by itself, that's merely a strategy. Because, you know, like to feel confident, maybe it's getting the next promotion, but maybe it's something else. What else is making you feel confident? You know, there are plenty of strategies to reach that.
I love the way how you describe it. It's beautifully said that the actual goal is just a strategy. It's beautifully said. So you should write a book about that. Because it's exactly how I perceive it when we strive for something. When I take it from another angle and I say, in our society, we learned to do, to become. So we learn to do a good job, to become rewarded by our boss. We learn to create a great company, to become a respected business person. We need to become we need to make children to become respected as parents. Whatever, it's all about doing and then becoming. And at the end, it's the other way around. It's know who we truly are, and then derive our doing from our being. Now, that's a very radical concept when it comes to the functioning of our society. But it works. So many people do it. We don't hear of them in the news because this is positive news. Who is interested in positive news? But it is happening so often, and I am so fortunate to meet these kind of people who just decided, and on all walks of life, like very successful, also in the society, seen as successful business people, who just understood this, and they are who they are, and they derive everything from them. That doesn't mean to be, that does not necessarily have to be spiritual people, just people who are aware of themselves. Always the same. I think spirituality, you can also bring it and break it down to being aware of yourself. At the end, that's what I think, I believe it all comes down to. Then all the constructs we create around it, they are nice. I like them. I like my concepts around the beliefs I have when it comes to spirituality. But at the end, they're not. Yeah, for at least they're not the basis. They're just keeping me on track, the track I decide to be on. But at the end, it's all about the awareness. Always coming back to that. Any last word you would like to share before we stop our first conversation, like free flow, no preparation. One question was prepared.
Well, actually, yeah, something that I'm maybe thinking a lot recently, like, and also in the light of our conversation that we had. So, if we would really focus on our desires, on who we are, as you said, right, like at our essence, what we are underneath, on our being, like, and if we would lose this like nice person persona that we're trying to impose, and we would really focus on what's inside, what we want, like in terms of our desires, how could it change, ourselves, and how it can change like the reality around us.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know, like it feels like it's such a difficult space to go in, but the possibility what comes out of it, if we just remove this, like being the nice person, the not looking inside ourselves but looking like outside at others, we just focus on ourselves, what it can bring, how beautiful, how powerful, how unstoppable we might become in achieving our goals, the strategies.
Yeah, how can we ask somebody to love us if we don't love us ourselves? How can we ask somebody to be pleased about us if we're not pleased about ourselves?
Yes.
So we're coming back to, so full circle, coming back to being accepting yourself, and especially accepting our shortcomings. Because it's very easy to accept our good sides. It's not so easy to accept the anger and the jealousy and all these emotions, which we would like to say, oh no, I'm beyond that. Yeah, well, yes. Amazing. So, well, we said 45 minutes. We're at 47. So I think if you agree, we just interrupt our conversation here. I don't want to stop it. I would love to do that again and just see where it drives us, and maybe, having fun with it.
Thank you, Marco. It was a pleasure. So cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.